I'm gonna start off by giving a nice welcome to everybody who's on the panel right now, Daniel, as well as everybody who's in the audience to join us today. My name is TJ Travis. I'm a member of the board of directors for Literary Arts Windsor. It's an honor to welcome you here tonight. This is our 20th anniversary edition, which is pretty exciting, of BookFest Festival de Livre in Windsor. Before we get started with tonight's programming and all our programs and festivals, it's important to us that we share this land acknowledgement. Literary Arts Windsor acknowledges that our organization and the festival are based on the traditional territories of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, which includes the Ojibwa, the Odawa, the Potawatomee. We respect the longstanding relationships with the First Nations people in this place, in the 100-mile Windsor-Essex Peninsula, and the straits, détroits of Detroit. We are proud to have we are proud to have continued to bring this wonderful annual festival of literary arts to Windsor-Essex County without interruption for 20 years. Once again, we have created a virtual festival that reaches across Canada and taps into the amazing and diverse group of authors. We want to especially thank the Canada Heritage, Canada Council of the Arts, the Ontario Arts Council, for believing in BookFest over the years and making this virtual event possible. I would now like to introduce our moderator for this evening, Daniel Lockhart, Windsor-born poet, author, publisher at Urban Farmhouse Press, and so much more for that. You know, I have to also put some respect on Daniel's ability to be prolific when it comes to publishing. My personal bookshelf is looking really nice. I think I might have like a whole line of Daniel's books, you know. So I just want to put the proper respect on Daniel's name. He's an institution in our community. And with that being said, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Oh, much respect, TJ. That was a very kind, very generous introduction. I'm just a city loudmouth. Anyways, I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. It's quite the event, and as an Indigenous writer myself, who spent many years sort of struggling to find a place to sort of join mainstream Canadian society, and for lack of a better word, that this sort of event is really important for all of our nations, for our entire country, and beyond, all of Turtle. We should think beyond country borders. So tonight's event, we're going to be featuring 4 amazing Indigenous writers, just writers in general. We don't have to look incredible. They're going to be sharing their works this evening. We have 4 of them. They're going to be giving us each readings between 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll have time for question and answer after. So order-wise, I'd like to begin. Let's keep it a big. No. Let's go order-wise. Tonight, Chief R. Stacey Laforme will begin. He's our lead-off. Bevann Fox will be second. John McDonald will be third, and Gord G.A. Grisenthwaite will close the evening out. So before we, of course, get to questions. So it's my profound honor to read the instructions. So let's hear what, for those of you who are not familiar with Chief Laforme's work, let's give him his introduction. So our Stacey Laforme is the elected chief of the Mississaugas of the First Nation. Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Born and raised on MCFN, Chief Laforme has served his community for over 20 years, being first elected to council in 1999. Chief Laforme has participated in a number of committees and boards throughout his 7 terms. Served as a councillor, including involvement with MCFN's Pan Am Games Secretariat. As chair of POG's committee, Chief Laforme is instrumental in raising the profile of all First Nations through the recognition of the MNCFN as the first ever official host First Nation of the Pan Am Para-Pan Am Games. He is very active throughout MNCFN's traditional territory, which encompasses 3.9 million acres of southern Ontario, not only as a chief, but as a notable storyteller and poet. Chief Laforme has recently been appointed as Honorary Senior Fellow from Massey College, joining the Duke of Edinburgh and the Chancellor of Oxford as only the 3rd person awarded the highest honor the college can bestow. Di Dawa Danes Dene me, my pronunciation is terrible. Aboriginal Health Center has awarded Chief R. Stacey Laforme the Walter Cook Wisdom Keeper Award in recognition of one's capacity to exemplify significant and continuous service to our community by demonstrating integrity, generosity of spirit, humility, courage, and collaboration. The good mind, the and the traditional ways of knowing and being. Chief Laforme has collaborated with Kevin Hearns of Bare Naked Ladies for a video song called 215 Reconciliation. Has participated in the CBC opening program of the Tokyo Olympics, and much more. His most recent published volume of poetry is entitled Living in the Tall Grass, Poems of Reconciliation, published by UpRoute Publishing. That is what I'm guessing Stacey will be reading from us tonight. It's a wonderful book, and I look very much forward to what you have to share with us tonight.
McWitz, thank you very much for that kind introduction. I'm sorry the bio was so long. If we were in person, I would have just said stop after you introduced my name. That would have been plenty for me. So anyway, I don't want to take up too much time. I know you got a lot of good authors right behind me. So I just want to say that the book is comprised of 8 chapters. First chapter being about Mother Earth and our relationship, and the next chapters being the 7 teachings of the Anishinaabe, which we try to live our lives by. And so it's not your normal standardized poetry sort of book. It's a story. It's a journey through each of the 7 grandfather teachings, and talks about the truth of the relationship with the world around us, and finishes by talking about taking us through pain, but also takes us to a place of hope and hopefully peace. And while it certainly is an Indigenous context, and obviously I'm an Indigenous author, I think it is more universal, and that's why I wrote the book. So if you don't mind, I'm actually going to read the poem that you talked about and you mentioned that I collaborated on with Kevin Hearns and Bare Naked Ladies, called Reconciliation 215. I sit here crying. I don't know why. I didn't know the children. I didn't know the parents. But I knew their spirit. I knew their love. I know their loss. I know their potential. And I am overwhelmed by the pain and the hurt. The pain of the families and friends. The pain of an entire people, unable to protect them, to help them, to comfort them, to love them. I did not know them, but the pain is so real, so personal. I feel it in my core, my heart, my spirit. I sit here crying, and I am not ashamed. I will cry for them and many others like them. I will cry for you. I will cry for me. I'll cry for what could have been. Then I will calm myself, smudge myself, offer prayers, and know they are no longer in pain. No longer do they hurt. They are at peace. In time, I will tell their story. I will educate society so their memory is not lost to this world. And when I am asked, what does reconciliation mean to me? I will say, I want their lives back. I want them to live, to soar. I want to hear their laughter, see their smiles. Give me that, and I'll grant you reconciliation. So obviously, I wrote that poem the day I heard of the uncovering in the residential schools, and I wrote it from a place of pain, hurt, anger, but also love. And I think it's important that people understand that these are the children of this country, and this loss is all our loss, and we should all find a way to grieve, to go forward together. So I'm sort of wanting to read a couple more things to you that I think are important, and I better go read at least 1 or 2 from the book. This one is called Heartbeats, and I wrote Heartbeats because I was at an AFN meeting, and people were talking about missing and murdered women. And this was quite a while ago. And I stood up and I promised that because I am have somewhat of a public image that every time I get a chance, I would talk about murder and missing women. And so I wrote this poem that is for that, called Heartbeats. Sometimes I wake up at night and call for you, and for a heartbeat, all is right with the world. But you're gone, and you can't come home. In my world will always be chaos. I cry because I cannot hold you or touch you. I also cry because for one heartbeat you are here. I have seen you on every corner, in every window of every store. Sometimes I swear I hear your voice, but it's never you. How could it be? And though I know it can't be you, for one heartbeat, I think it is. So I find myself searching every face, listening to every wind-blown word. My mind knows the truth, but allows my heart a moment of purity. And although the deception is brief, it exists. And in that second, so do you. And I'm not sure if it's a blessing or a curse. How do I move on when I see you every time I turn my head too quick? How can I face the world knowing you're not in it, yet so briefly you are? And your image gives me so much love, yet the knowledge that it's just an image breaks my heart. My heart breaks every night and all through the day, but I wouldn't give up the illusion to end the pain. So for 23 hours and 55 minutes of every day, I grieve, but for 5 minutes, all is right in my world. And when I talk about that, I talk about the fact that that is about Indigenous women, children, and men, but it's also about the ideology around the world of all our women, you know, and the loss we feel from that. Now I want to read another poem I wrote originally for the Indigenous people, but then I start reading it in public and I realized this is for everybody. So it's called On Common Ground. No one thing can define us, for we are complex creatures dreamed in the mind of the Creator. We laugh when we should cry. We cry when we should laugh. We joke when in pain. We smile because tears could consume us. We love unconditionally and totally. We understand that family should come first, yet family is not defined solely by blood. We are quick to anger, but no one forgives faster. We are loyal and we are strong. When we commit, we are unwavering. We have survived much, but do not mistake adaptation for resignation. You will always see us, for we will always be here, standing for what we believe in, standing beside each other, doing what is right for our children, our future. We remember our obligation to our mother, the earth, and we remember our place upon her. We are a proud people, an honorable people. We do not always do right, for we are human and prone to the follies of humanity. Yet we strive to be better, to make each other better, to make the world a better place for the children. I know the Creator smiles upon us, no matter where we are or what we do, for the love of the child is unconditional. No matter where life takes you, walk proud. So I wrote that because I believe that everyone can see or hear something of themselves in that poem. And that teaches us that no matter how far apart we may seem, we're never so far that we can't find common ground. And, you know, in today's society, I think that's an important message. Now somebody's going to have to tell me when my time's up, because I do have a habit of rambling on. But I want to read you one more from the book. It's called I Love This Land. And I wrote this poem many years ago when I saw an elderly veteran approach, I forget what the meeting was, but talk about when they came home from the war and how they were treated. And if I don't tell people that it was written from that perspective, they mostly assume it's about their war veterans, because everybody has a dark piece of this history in their country. And it's called I Love This Land. You were and always shall be my brother. We were all the same color, wrapped in the flag of this nation. My blood flowed as freely as yours, mixed in the fields. One could not be distinguished from the other. Yet when we came home, when the nation's colors were removed, differences became apparent, not between you and me, God willing never, but in the eyes of those for whom we laid down our lives. Oh, we still stood shoulder to shoulder in the parades, but the government thought that your life was more valuable than mine. So you were given land and property while I waited and waited. I know what you were given was not enough for what we endured. Still, it was much more than I. I am not envious of you, brother. I believe you deserve even more than you received. But it hurt me very badly. I'm not ashamed to say I cried. And why not? I bled, I died, I killed. Why does my country think I am unworthy? The enemy I fought could never be as cruel as the people I came back to embrace. I gave so much, lived through so much, and then you who I'd give all for, you pushed me aside as if I was inconsequential. I feel as if I have been spit upon by one I honored. Do I feel good having to ask for what should have been given long ago? No. In fact, I'm a little ashamed to ask for justice in this. For I never went to war for money, for glory, for reward. I went because it was the right thing to do, and God forgive me, I would go again. This may seem an old wound to you, but it is a wound that never heals, for it is a wound of my people's heart and soul, an insult to our pride, and we deserve so much better, especially from you. So I know my 10 to 15 minutes is probably up, but I'd like to say that I have a lot of poems about Mother Earth and our connection to her, and when we talk about reconciliation, you know, in the largest sense of it, it is about understanding the world around us and our place within it. You know, and then it's obviously relations to everything else and each other and things of that nature. I wish I had more time to read you some of the other poems, but
Stacey, give us one more. I think you have enough time to give us at least one more.
okay, I'll give you. I won't do the one that I did for the opening of the Olympics. I'll give you one for that I wrote. See, in the book, I wrote a poem about a tree that stands there through time, and it watches evolution of the children, the people, and how they treated it, and eventually they all pass away, and the tree is left standing by itself with nobody there to look, you know, to talk to anymore. So then I wrote, and then I thought to myself, well, you know, if humanity does perish, and I hope we don't. I hope we get smart and we move forward in a good way. But if humanity does, you know, perish, that poem was written from a perspective of, you know, the world will go on. But if I've learned anything about humanity is we will not go quietly. If there's any hope, any dream, any, you know, thing, even out there that's beyond belief, if we think about it might give us an extra hour or extra day, we'll do it. And so we'll take the planet with us. So I wrote this poem called Mother, from the perspective of Mother Earth. Why do you hurt me when I have nothing but love for you? I have seen you crawl from the dark into the light. I have watched you learn to walk and then to fly. I've seen you squabble and fight. I have cheered for you and I have feared for you. I give freely of what is mine to give, yet you take more than I am able. You hurt me more and more. You ignore my pain and my cries. I am ancient, but I am not immortal. I have a time. Why do you seek to rob me of it? Through the years, I have been here for you and yours, for your grandmothers and their grandmothers and their grandmothers. I would stay to see your children raise their children, but I cannot, for I am dying. I do not measure the passing of time as you do. Nevertheless, I know my time is coming, and it is soon. I love you, my children, but I fear I will fail you. And even though you have failed me first, anger is not in me, for I was created of love, as were you. Therefore, the toughest part of goodbye is knowing that you cannot go on without me, that your time will end far too soon, and no one will know. This great journey, this grand adventure called humanity, will be undone as if it never existed. I will care for you as long as I am able. Yet when the rivers no longer flow, when the trees die, when the wind rages, and the storms come, know that it is not my anger, it is the end of the love I can no longer give, the love you can no longer take. It is my end, and sadly, it is yours. So my messaging is more around education, understanding, looking at the world through a bigger lens and understanding where we are. You know, before I wrap up, I'd just like to say that and I can't go into a whole discussion about the environment, Mother Earth and stuff, but I would just like to say to the audience that I challenge you. Instead of thinking of climate change as a problem to be solved, think instead of Mother Earth as a soul to be saved. If you can do that one thing, you can change everything. Miigwech, and thank you so much for having me.
Miigwech, for your words, your honesty, and it's just wonderful. Thank you. Well, I can't wait to talk some more. Up next, Bevann Fox, who I've been really fortunate when I had a small stint at the University of Regina Press, and I got to see this book coming into being, and just to be here moderating this panel and get to see Bevann's work and hear her present it, it's going to mean a lot to me. So let's introduce her. For those who don't know, Bevann Fox is a member of the Pasqua First Nation, originally from the Piapot First Nation. In 2012, she received her Bachelor of Arts in Arts and Culture, and in 2018, her Master's in Business Administration, Leadership from the University of Regina. In 2014, she was honored with the YWCA Woman of Distinction Award, Arts, Culture, and Heritage. She is the founder, producer, and co-host of Access TV's The Four. Her 2020 book, Genocidal Love, won an Indigenous Voices Award and a Saskatchewan Book Award. It is my honor to present Bevann Fox.
Thank you, Daniel, for that wonderful introduction. And Stacey, incredible readings there. It's such an honor to be here with all you talented writers. And congratulations, 20 years, Windsor BookFest. Anyway, Genocidal Love has really been creating a lot of interesting discussions lately and a lot of great reviews about it. And my intent for this book was actually for my children and grandchildren, and kind of, you know, something to leave behind, you know, hopefully not sooner, but down the road. But anyway, after a while, I wanted it to reach more of a larger audience, because just realizing what the impact of the genocide from those institutions I call residential school, because those were my first years of my educational life, from grade 1 to grade 5. And it was an everyday survival going in that place. So I wrote a lot in journals and papers, napkins. I was always writing, and also documented the legal process, you know, applying for the compensation. And that was just a really horrific journey to go through. And it took me, I think it was like 13 years to finish that process, after going through all these different models of agreements and processes that the government put in place for us, and for all of us Indigenous people, putting us all in one framework model. So yeah, there was about maybe 4 changes, 4 processes. So I documented it in this book, and I wanted to tell like a fictional, like a story too, like you know, Myrtle moves to the city looking for love and can never find it because of the flashbacks and her childhood, the abuse sort of followed her, and getting in cycles of domestic violence and addictions. And was really in poverty too. But I'll do some readings here. Me too, I like to get going, rambling on different topics. I had markings when Stacey was reading. I thought, okay, I'm going to read this too. And then now my book is all full of all these different, what am I going to read now? After that, Stacey. But yeah, I got emotional there on your reading, Stacey. It really, really hits home my heart. Okay, so first I'll read this prologue. I like to start off. My grandfather, he's Cree, my late grandfather, Gaston. He used to tell the same story over and over about the treaties and the Queen and Yellow Dog Breast. And so I turned it into a fairy tale at the front. So I'll start with this one. All my pieces are really short. So, okay. Hopefully you can all hear me here because I have a hard time seeing my bifocals on. The prologue in Genocidal Love. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful land with millions of beautiful red people who lived a traditional peaceful life in balance with the nature of Mother Earth. One day, a wicked queen from another world came to visit. She was amazed with the beautiful land and the beautiful red people. My, what do we have here? She said in a cackling, shrill voice. She turned to her men in silver shining armor. Get ready for battle. We will take over this land and all the red people. The queen turned to her representative, a short little man. Go and represent me and meet with the red people and fool them with a piece of paper called a treaty. We will fill it with promises. They cannot speak, read, or write English anyway. Invite the red leaders to sign this treaty paper with any kind of mark because they can't write. The piece of paper with their mark will give me control of all the lands, and I promise to take care of the red people as my own little red children. I will be their mother dearest. I am the richest, fairest one in all the world. In all the lands. I will take care of the red children forever and ever. The wicked queen laughed and laughed. The treaty was written with promises. It was talked about between the red people and the queen's men. The queen promised in the treaty that if the red people surrendered the land, they would get gunpowder, a brick school, health, reservations to live on, and $5 every year. This treaty was to last forever as long as the sun shines and the grass grows and the river flows. It would never be broken. Yellow Dog Breast came to the signing of the treaty in the beautiful valley. He was very angry as he walked forward to the front line. Everyone stopped to look at him. Yellow Dog Breast was strikingly beautiful. Oh, good Lord. He stood tall as he held his robe around him. Finally, he threw off his robe and stood completely naked. Yellow Dog Breast gave out a cry to the heavens. He threw up his arms and jumped in the air and then fell to his knees. He leaned forward and kissed the ground and said, "This is my land." The queen laughed and laughed as her representatives told a story about Yellow Dog Breast. Yellow Dog Breast may have stopped the signing of the treaty briefly, but his own red people did not listen. As the queen sang, "This land is my land forever and ever," all her horses and men danced along beside her, and she lived happily ever after. So that's a little short piece at the front that starts the book. And then I'm going to go to, because some in the discussions, we don't really hear much about how these treaties, like with the queen and, them coming over and making this deal. And then I see, look at us where we're at today. Like we're still, a lot of people are struggling, and I call it genocide. I'll say, okay, I'm going to read Genocide Got My Brother. Life could be one of pleasure and wellness, or hell or sickness. Sometimes it was wonderful to be alive and to feel every part of my body and my heart beating in peace and completeness. But sometimes all I could feel was terror and pain in my soul. But I was starting to understand that I had to learn to live each breath to its fullest. Have you listened to a breath lately? I asked myself. I wrote these thoughts on pieces of pink paper, opened my drawer of notes, and put the pretty paper among all the others. Then I grabbed a green journal and began to write with a sense of righteousness and power. I felt the tears coming and wondered how many more tears had to be shed before it would be over. Please don't hide anymore. Don't protect the people who made you this way. Don't be silent anymore. You made you the way you are. You got help to be this way, as the genocidal practice upon a nation is now in effect forever. But you have to stop blaming now. How can I not blame anymore? I wrote out the word genocide and then looked in the dictionary for its definition. Genocide, the deliberate and systematic destruction of a racial, political, or cultural group. Destruction of me? I was part of a culture. Where is it? A tribe once with family, where kinship was honored, unwritten laws existed, a language more significant than English, trees untouched, ceremonies a part of life, change of life and second childhood existed and were honored in a circle of life so accepted. Where is it? Genocide almost got me. Genocide has my brother who walks the streets talking to spirits and gods, picking up butts, eating out of garbage cans, asking for change so he can buy glue and sniff the genocidal effects away. He hasn't bathed for days and his leg is seeping poison, perhaps gangrene. He smells like a dead animal. The family gives him a home to live, but he won't stay. The clothes and shoes we bought for him, he will sell them. So easy to get a mental health warrant to have police pick him up off the street and take him to the hospital. But my brother can survive and talk a good talk to get himself out. He is smart and he is aware of what he's doing. He is not stupid. How many times they tried to save him from genocide? But he is living it. He is the genocidal effects. Can't everyone see that? So he walks the streets begging as his leg drips rotten yellow pus. His pant leg is soaked with pus. He will call on holidays and have dinner with me. Yes, he knows the family's phone numbers. They clean him up and give him new clothes and shoes. He goes to the bathroom and sniffs his glue and leaves staggering down the street, talking to spirits beside him. I had escaped genocide just by a smidge. All my relationships were genocidal. There, but for the grace of God, I go. I would say after another failed relationship. Never would I criticize my brother because I understood. Just the other day, I had stopped him on the streets. When are you going to stop being a victim? You break my heart, brother, I said. They got me in the assimilation process, that famous buzzword. I was somewhat assimilated because how else could I live? Maybe assimilation had saved me because I could survive in the white world and I could also survive on the res. I took Nimosom's word of advice. Take the good and the best of both worlds and live. Leave the bad alone. But sometimes I felt half in and half out of both worlds, living an abstract life. When I looked in the mirror, I saw the faint brown freckles staring back at me. I smiled at my freckles, my sparkling beauty spots, as I kicked down that door to my memories. Every day, the nun had told me to pray for forgiveness in the chapel. Pray for forgiveness for having those ugly marks on your face, or you will burn in hell for it. You evil little Indian girl, you ugly stink savage. I went to the chapel as I was ordered. I knelt and prayed. Dear God, please forgive me for having these evil marks on my face. Please don't burn me in hell. But now I know that my freckles are not evil. They are part of what makes me Myrtle. And Myrtle is the character of the book here. I choose the name Myrtle. That was my grandmother's name, but the book is not about her. My 93-year-old aunt said, make sure you tell them that the book is not about my mother. Her mind is sharp as a, she still controls us all from the home that she's at. She picks up the phone. She's the last we have left. Is my and I talk about her in the book too. So yeah, so how much do I read one more, or is this good?
I think it's a good stopping point. I want to just leave time because there's so much that's been said, and I want to make sure that we have time for discussion.
Great.
Absolutely
Thank
beautiful. And thank you, Bevann. That's awesome. I knew shake, as we say, right? Okay. Up next is John McDonald. I want to say that I was familiar with some of John's work before I even came in here, and it was one of the books I was very excited to finally get my hands on. Not that I wasn't excited for all the other ones, but John's, for some reason, really spoke to me, probably because I really like some of that Radiant Press doing on Regina. So, without further ado, John McDonald is a multidisciplinary writer and artist originally from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. A sixth-generation descendant of Chief Mistawasis of the Plains Cree, John's writings and artwork have been displayed in various publications, private and permanent collections, and galleries around the world. John is one of the founding members of the PA Lowbrow Art Movement and is the vice president of the Indigenous Peoples Artists Collective. Notably, that's my addition, John has studied at England's prestigious University of Cambridge. In July 2000, he made international headlines. This is great. By symbolically discovering and claiming England as the first peoples of the Americas. We can all go there now, right? He is the author of Childhood Thoughts and Water 2020, and his latest work is Kikotam, He Speaks to It, from Radiant Press. John lives near Christopher Lake, Saskatchewan, and it's my honor to introduce him.
Thank you for the introduction. I appreciate it. Everybody can hear me okay? We're good? All right, awesome. I'm coming to you from my ancestral territory of Treaty 6 territory in the Northern Boreal Forest in Northern Saskatchewan. I'm very honored to be here to present, to share my words. And as the title of the book says, in Cree, in Neheo, the word Kikotam, that means he speaks to it, he addresses it. I'm obviously speaking to you with a borrowed language. You know, I've lost my conversational Cree. I no longer can speak conversational Cree. That being said, the written word, the English language, has been something that has served me well in sharing the stories that I need to share as a tichima, as a storyteller. And so the first poem I'm going to read is about language, is about this language and the interesting takes that is going on. On language. Words stitched together in particular cadence, meant to be read in this particular way, be it out loud or silently in your head. It is odd that so much of these various combinations of the 26 letters of the English language are manipulated to increase emotional connectivity. And what of those words birthed upon lined sheets of paper or pixelated computer screens, the words that do not meet the requirements and are torn from coil ring binders or select all, delete? Eradicated from existence, their only crime having been not a good enough combination of those 26 letters. Those combinations compiled like a spoonful of alphabet soup or tiles from a Scrabble board, joined, married, consecrated, these straight lines, curlicues, whirls, swirls, and dots, a ciphered code. There's more than a few of us first taught this code sitting in front of television screens as Big Bird and Grover. Bert and Ernie indoctrinated us into this cult of mysteries and taught us the incantation, the sacred song of knowledge. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Those hieroglyphics we stared at from our school desk as they hung upon the walls, written in chalk at the very top of the blackboard. letters, vowels and consonants, the dying art of words being slaughtered by abbreviated phrases like Huxley's Brave New World, this newspeak with its LOLs and OMGs, and a generation that cannot write in cursive and cannot read anything handwritten. What would Big Bird say if he could see us now? The next poem I'm going to read comes from a position of, particularly around this time of year, with Halloween approaching, of what it means to be as an Indigenous artist. And I fully acknowledge the irony that the poem that I'm going to read while wearing this vest, the vest, I always bring our missing and murdered Indigenous sisters. Oh, am I still there? I always make sure that I bring our sisters with us and acknowledge them. My cousin, Karina Wolf, was one of the missing and murdered. And so I always make sure that I acknowledge them. But when I present this poem, I always make sure I acknowledge the irony of what I'm about to read. As an Indigenous artist, when you hear those words and you say that to a non-Indigenous person or a non-Indigenous group, you're going to have an automatic set of ideas pop into that person's head about what that means. And right now we are fighting pan-Indigenousness across Turtle Island, where a set of what is stereotypically Indigenous is being passed off as representing us all. So this poem is called "So Sick of Beads." When people hear the words Native American art, a flood of images often fills the mind. Paintings of eagle feathers, buffalo skulls, Haida masks, Coco Pelli, moccasins, powwow regalia, dream catchers, the end of the trail, sounds of wooden flutes or dump 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 dump. Bastardized souvenirs, beaded cigarette lighter cases, beaded Nike symbol chokers, beaded lanyards, all these beads everywhere, beads, beads, beads. In the 1970s, beaded headbands, that sacred symbol of that venerated tribe, the Hollywood Indian, created to keep braided wigs on the heads of extras and stuntmen as they rode across Utah and Arizona, Geronimo's land, while dressed as Sitting Bull. Goddamn colonial trinkets, reminders of poor real estate deals on Manhattan Island. The death of the red man's way of life brought about by beads, this one trinket I had thought whose time had passed since they started hiring real Indians for movies. But no. Been shopping for a Halloween costume lately? And once again, if I'm going overtime, stop me, because I'm I'm a residential school survivor. I was in residential school from 1984 to 1989. I'm among the last generation of residential school survivors. And one day, those of my generation will be the last firsthand survivors. I went to residential school, both siblings, both parents, both aunties and uncles on both sides, all grandparents on all four sides. So 3 generations of residential school survivors. My children are the first generation to have never known the inside of a residential school. It's only been within the last little bit that I've been able to speak openly about it, because as you can obviously see through the camera, I'm a very light-skinned individual, and to start dealing with that trauma and having somebody question whether or not you experienced it would have been, it's a very harsh thing. And so the poem I wrote is dedicated to all of us who are light-skinned. We carry this light skin. This poem is called Light Skin. There are times when ours is the hardest road to walk. We will always be the outsiders, the reminders of colonization, the living proof that someone in our family either dared a moment of passion with a white person or had it forced upon them. It's what can make us the fiercest of warriors. We're not fighting for them. We're fighting for ourselves. How am I doing for time?
Do one more. That was good. Do one more.
All right. The two I'm going to read, the final, well, it's a pair of them. I wrote this one recently because in August of 2020, we had something in Saskatchewan here that was a very powerful statement that meant so much for a lot of people across Canada. We had a young man named Tristan DeRocher, who was a fiddler from northern Saskatchewan. And Tristan walked from La Ronge, Saskatchewan to Regina, Saskatchewan, some nearly 700 kilometers, and to raise awareness about suicides that were happening in northern communities. And for 44 days, Tristan went on a fast in front of the legislature, hoping that some of those politicians who were trying to defeat a suicide prevention bill would come across the street and kind of sit and understand, but instead they sent Regina City bylaw to bust his chops for destroying a park. So, and I was honored to travel to Regina, travel to that territory, and sit with a young man who's got a very old soul, and I'm very, very honored to count him among family. And so the poems I'm going to read are one that I wrote on the way to Regina, and one I wrote for Tristan, and then I'll close. Walkabout in Treaty Fort territory. I got out of the car to stretch my legs at the place where Highway 2 ends. The summer smell of southern Saskatchewan is strange to me. I stopped to pick buffalo sage on this bald, parched prairie. The wind takes my tobacco offering and blows it towards the 18-wheelers thundering eastbound past me. I turn to face north. The ribbon of asphalt at my feet stretches from here to La Ronge. 400 kilometers down this stretch lies the turnoff to my house. I feel suffocated by the open land. I need trees. An ode to the fiddler for Tristan DeRocher. Therein lies the fiddler, the northerner, sitting in the shade of the man-made trees near the man-made lake, 635 kilometers south of where the trees and waters were there first. Therein lies the fiddler, his tea growing cold in his ceramic mug, as the sun takes the shadow of his lodge, the shadows of the photographs around it, and stretches them far across the man-made lawns, so precious to the ones with the guns and badges. Therein lies the fiddler, smiling the tired smile of a warrior spirit as people come for their photo ops and clamor to be on the right side of all of this. Therein lies the fiddler, upon his heart the spirits of young ones, whose caskets and urns upon whom the notes of his fiddle fell too many times. Therein lies the fiddler, speaking for those who cannot speak for themselves, outside of a building full of people who will not listen. Fighting a battle for a world where young people will not have to see the end of a rope as a solution, upon land where Louis Riel was subjected to such a solution. Therein lies the fiddler. Like the warriors of old, hungry spirit, hunger strike upon the prairies where trees never grew. Therein lies the fiddler. His medicine bundle overflowing like the circles of photographs around his lodge. therein lies the fiddler. Thank you for listening. Exit.
Music. Done. Wow. Almost there. Okay. We've come to the fourth reader. Closer, if you will. I'll just have the closing because we're going to talk later. What can I say about G.A. Grisenthwaite? I mean, Gord. I know him as Gord. We've gotten to know each other over the years as local writers, as Nijis in crime, I may say. What an honor to see Gord's path as I see him develop as a writer and as his sort of growth in terms of popularity. Canada's figuring out what the rest of us know down here in southwestern Ontario and Wawi-Yongtanong. So I'll get to why we're even talking about that here. But G.A. Grisenthwaite is a member of the Linton First Nation. Sorry, Gord, I'm terrible pronouncing the actual name. You can correct me later. His stories and poems have appeared in the Indigenous Review, Our Stories Literary Journal, and Prism International. His work has earned a number of prizes. I like how he just passed them down, including the 2014 John Keith Garabeth Literary Award. He lives in Kingsville, Ontario. His most recent work, which, in case you have not been made aware of, and you should be, has been shortlisted for the Governor General's Award. What an honor. Home Waltz, Palimpsest Press. Gord shares that with us this evening. Really looking forward to this. Gord.
Gwen, quick, Jim. Thank you for that. Yeah, this is Home Waltz. I'm going to read a brief section, little ways into the book. Good lighting. Yeah. It doesn't need much of a setup. It's two people, the narrator and his best friend. The situation makes itself pretty clear pretty quickly. 7:40 p.m. The rumble of heavy wheels on gravel. A school bus, too short to be one of ours, turns into Auntie's yard. My heart pounds in my ears and crotch. I jump to my feet, ready to run after the bus like a dog. I skip into a trot. Aunties will soon crawl with girls, and I need to make sure I get one. Skinny grabs my shoulder and spins me around. Tap her cool, kid, he says. Tap her cool. You run in there oozing desperation like that, and the girls will run from you like you're diseased. I'm cool, I squeak. Nah, if anything, you're uncool. But with some help, you could maybe fake it long enough to snag yourself a fox. Do what I say and you'll be okay. I never ever thought of myself as I never ever thought myself cool, but uncool. What could be worse than uncool? Even not cool is realer, like Bimbo, someone who sits in the bottom of a deep pit drilled into Cool's basement. I figured I'd earned a place in Cool's front stoop at least. Cody maybe on the 10th floor, Skinny and Jim maybe had penthouses. Uncool puts me in a pit inside a pit under Bimbo's. Just when you think you know your place in the world, something comes along and undoes it. Uncool? What's that even mean? Like, I really want to know. Maybe it's not so bad as it sounds. Who am I kidding? Well, Skinny goes, when Cool walks into a room, he don't walk, he struts. His head held high, his chest puffed out, not all old guy sucking in his gut puffed, but out his chest goes and he grows almost 2 inches taller, and he struts 4 steps away from me, spins and struts back. And you don't walk, no, you swagger like Jagger, and them girls will fall at your feet. You try it. I feel like a world-class dope. My body doesn't have a clue how to swagger like Jagger or anyone else, except maybe a 2-year-old in a poopy diaper. Christ almighty, you walk like you got a hot load of crap in your pants. Just relax. Things confidence. It's easy. I suppose it's easy if it comes to you naturally, but for me, not so much. He swats my butt and then my chest. Stand like a man, not some homo erectus, Skinny goes. He practically doubles over with laughter. Homo erect us. Well, not till you bagged your fox, but then you can go all homo erectus on her. He thrusts his hips, shouts spring, and madly humps the night. He opens his other beer with his teeth, spits its cap into the air. It arcs like a perfect it arcs like a perfect hook shot, and then it's swallowed by night. Instead of heading to Auntie Max's, he pulls up a stump and sits, legs fully extended and spread wide. What about the girls, I say? Girls don't want a guy who runs after them like a drooling puppy. You got to make them think you don't even care they're around. What? No, I got to be the first in line for one of them before a better guy comes along. How else are they going to notice me? Sit, relax, have a drink. We know where they are. They know we're coming. Let them wait. Remember, just swagger like Jagger. He takes cool to a new level. Stretch out all long and thin on that stump, king cool, especially next to me, all hunched over like a toad on a stump across from him. King uncool. Instead of relaxing, my mind plays movies of me as Jerry Lewis and the bellboy, except I don't stumble into love or anything good. My brain's practically convinced me I could wander into a bush and Sasquatch wouldn't even take me as either mate or meal. I'll dive into the bottom of my bottle and drink myself to death. Who needs girls anyways? What a stupid question. I do. So how you like them, Skinny goes. Like who? Girls, you simp. You like them tall, short, thin, chunky? I like them all except the mean ones. They're all mean. You got to know how to tame them all. No, that can't be mean. They can't all be mean, can they? Yep, they are, unless they want you or something you have. Skinny cups his crotch. With me, all they want is my golden scepter, and I don't care, because that's all I got to give them. At least you got that. Way more than I have. Just as soon to be drop out with 3 paper routes. I suppose Creator put prostitutes here so guys like me could rent love now and then. So what about Bernie? You were like her? Yeah, I say. I think I could go crazy for her. So what's keeping you from going for it? What's the worst thing that could happen? What if she shoots me down? So what? She shoots you down, you get up, wipe dirt off your ass and ask her again, a different way. When she sees you're serious, maybe she starts taking you serious too. But you guys said it would never happen. Teasing, just teasing. You got to learn to take a joke. When you can laugh at yourself the way we laugh at you, you'll find you're cool. Or jail cell, because I've killed everyone who, after taking one joke too many. Or rubber room in Riverview, because I was laughed at so much it broke my mind. My cool? Yeah, you're cool. Steve McQueen got his own cool. Jagger has his. Paul Newman, Elvis, all the greats have their own cool. I guess they were born that way, but the rest of us, we got to work at it. We got to practice till it fits us better than our own skin. Skinny tosses his bottle into the bush behind him. I place my empty near my stump beside its twin. We swagger like Jagger, strutting like this does not feel like me, to Auntie Max's back door. Skinny swings the door open like he's Clint Eastwood's character in A Fistful of Dollars. Besides a blast of light and warmth, were greeted by the stones blaring brown sugar and voices of oh, so many girls. I followed the light, and now I'm about to enter heaven. Thank you. Quick jump.
Usually, thank you. Wow, we've had a great series of readings, and we still have some time. We've saved at least a half hour, 28 minutes for the session. And I do want to leave this somewhat as a discussion if possible. Are we taking questions directly from the audience, or am I just asking? Someone knows what's going on. Look at that. I'll start with the first question while we wait, and we'll go from there, because I really want to I want to get to the work and how this all relates, because we have such a beautiful diversity of voices. I think John had pointed towards this problem that we have in Canadian and festivals, where we often just approach something as pan-Indigenous, and there are many nations here. We all come from different cultures, so there is an aspect of pan-Indigenousness that one could argue exists, but I think that all of us are coming at our work in this panel as something a little different. Okay, we just have official questions are welcome from the audience, so please feel free to post them in the comments, the chat there, and I will obviously relay them to our author as well. So as a first question, just to get us started while we wait, I'd like to sort of hear anyone's ideas about how traditional teachings have played a role in what you're writing, because we're all writing in English here, and I want to see how that sort of plays a role in your work. Whoever wants to start, go right ahead. No one, no takers. Look at that. No one's taking anything. Who's going first?
John's hands up.
All right,
I'll
go ahead.
jump in. I think that, as Indigenous people, our role as storytellers has always been there. We are the keepers of the traditions. We are the keepers of the ways, the knowledge that we are the vehicles for which the stories of our people get passed on. So it's something that to be an Indigenous writer, we're taking a tradition that we're coming from time immemorial of in Cree, in my language we call them titsamak. We're storytellers, and so that tradition has always been there. And so what we're doing is we're taking we're just the next link in that chain of storytellers from time immemorial, passing on the stories and the traditions and the entertainment value of what we as Indigenous people have, and we're sharing that with the next generation, and hopefully instilling in the next generation the drive and the impetus to continue on creating the next generation of storytellers.
Awesome. Yeah, there's that running tradition we have to follow. I often think about it's amongst the Anishinaabe that the Gigon, the fish clan, is often our storytellers. I'm not niche, but often sometimes it falls along clan lines. That's part of it. Stacey?
Yeah, you have such a polite group of authors here that everybody is almost too polite in our nature, and we always wait for the other guy and the lady. So, but it's interesting. Back when I first got into writing, and I wrote for some time. When I started writing when I was 30, to deal with the trauma in my life, I wrote my first poem in grade 8, much like other young men of the time. I was like, "What do you mean we got to write a poem? I don't want to write no darn poems." Yes. So anyway, I wrote this poem, and I can't even remember what it was now. And I thought to myself, "Holy shit, this is good." I said, "This is really good." I shocked myself. And so the teacher took it and she read it in front of the class, and she goes, "Isn't that beautiful?" But without talking to me, she had changed some things in the poem, to make it either flow better or to make it what she thought was more effective. And not a lot, but enough to impact me so that I never wrote another poem until I was 30 years old.
Wow.
So, even though we sometimes think we're doing the right thing, without that communication, we end up doing the opposite. And what John said about passing on that storytelling gift, I went to one of my first speaking engagements, reading poetry, and it was very good and moving. And I had not learned at the time to temper it with humor and other things. So it was just like a heart-wrenching, hour and a half of pain and hurt for everybody. But it was still well received, a lot of energy and power. And when I was done, this other lady from the university was there to read a poem, and she didn't want to read one. She said, "I'm not reading a poem after that." And so I took it from her. I read it and I encouraged her. And I found out a couple of years later that she had been writing nonstop after that. And to myself, I said, even if nothing else becomes of my writing other than that, I'm okay with it. Yeah, so I think that's important to what John's story is.
Yeah, no. Any other takers? Thanks.
Yeah. My grandmother came out of residential school, a white woman, and I had no traditional stories at all. But I read a lot as a kid because I was hid in a closet basically until I was 30 or something. And so I had no idea I was a writer. In first year English instructor told me I should take creative writing, and I thought she was nuts. But I took creative writing, and even though I didn't write for a long time after that, I'm glad I did. I'm glad I listened to her.
Sometimes it takes us a while to find our path. Wonderful. And traditions, sometimes I often think traditions aren't always related to 500 years ago. So I'm part of the golfing Lenape family clan. So golfing is one of our traditions. It's a tradition that goes back 75 years. But no, it's interesting that traditions play different. Bevann?
Yeah. My grandfather was an excellent storyteller, and he could talk for hours telling stories. And actually, he used to get me to write articles for him and stories, and he'd send them to the local newspapers. And this one article was published. We were so proud, and he let me sign my name to his article. It was about tanning hides, like right from, there was no instruments used, like no special tools and that. It was all made from, from the bones and from the animal itself. So it was really interesting. So that got published, and I was really happy about that. But he really inspired me. I talk about him in the book a lot, like his teachings, even with colors and four directions. So yeah, he's really important influence in my writing.
Thank you. There's so much here that's like, we have such a strong connection to family tradition, regardless of what's interrupted that. I mean, we've had obviously some interruptions for some terrible colonial aspects, the genocide that we talk about, that mentioned a lot in your book, right? Let's take some questions. I had a couple from the audience now. It's even more exciting. Nicole Markotic, sorry if I mispronounced your last name. She says, these have all been incredible readings and so powerful. All of you have brought up intense subjects, sometimes couched in humor. Can you speak about how you approach these subjects as writers and why? Who wants to lead us off here? Gord, go for it. Add her up.
Okay. Yeah. I write the kind of stories that were lived around me. If that makes any sense. And well, the humor was accidental. Honestly, I didn't know I was writing funny stuff until people in the audience were laughing, and I was wondering what the hell is wrong with me. Since I started reading a lot more Indigenous writers, notably Thomas King, and listening to Thomas King, Dead Dog Cafe and stuff, I've deliberately worked on polishing the humor that comes from stories. I mean, if you don't laugh, even in the face of the strongest tragedy or bad stuff, it hurts. It's laughing helps either get through the bad stuff. It also helps make swallowing hard stuff easier. more palatable. And for me, it seems that if I can make you laugh, and while I'm telling you some ugly truths, then maybe the ugly truths will have a chance to percolate and sink in, settle in, and maybe it will open another discussion. I hope that helps.
Oh, that's awesome. We already got the accidental humor. What a great that should be the title of a whole anthology of Indigenous humor. Accidental humor. Next. Any other takers?
I can talk a little bit about the fact of how I write and why I write. So when I write, I actually write from the perspective of a character. So it's a moment in time in somebody's life. And to do that, I have to somehow become that character and live what that character feels. So if they're crying, I'm crying. If they're happy, I'm happy. If they're heartbroken, I'm heartbroken. And the thing about it is, you know, I often write about things that I have no knowledge of from my time walking the earth, that I consider spiritual, and I'm able to capture from that perspective, even though I may not have the learned knowledge of it. And I've done it in a lot of areas, and I look back at that as sort of a fallout to some of the gifts as people were given when we come into this world. We have certain gifts that we have. Some people are healers, some people are hunters, some people do other things. And as a person, I had almost lost, as a nation, I almost lost our culture and heritage. 30 years ago, I had none of the language and none of the teachings. And so there I am having a gift of our people, and many do. And I had no idea how to use it and what to do with it. Okay, I'll give you an example. So I've always been able to tell when people are sick or they're upset or they're hurt, and I'm naturally drawn to them and want to help them, right? And so I accidentally take on a lot of their pain and their hurt. And without an outlet to do that, if you continue to do that, you damage yourself immensely. And so what I found is that I channeled mine into writing, and the ability to write comes from that sector. So it sort of saved myself. But I think there's so many other young people in not only Indigenous world, but in a lot of the worlds that have these gifts and they don't know what to do with them, and they actually turn into something that's actually damaging as opposed to being the value they're supposed to bring.
Right. Oh, we are nothing without our people. That's for sure. The self-care is something that I have been encouraging a lot of fellow Indigenous artists to be doing since forever, but this year's been particular. So I think a lot of good advice there.
I'm unmuted. I'm unmuted.
No. Is there any other takers on the question on the floor?
Yep.
What humor?
Are we still on that topic of humor?
Yeah, if nobody else has anything to add, we'll move on to the next one.
I just want to say something about my book. There's a lot of humor in this book, and it kind of, the trauma and pain and the humor takes you on this journey. Lots of laughter. I have some really crazy cousins, female cousins, and one of them, Pauline, I call in the book. I said, I'm going to talk about you. I'm going to write about you. And she said, don't you dare. And anyway, it's just hilarious. And I feel that with humor, it's helped me a lot in healing, like just to get that release out. And self-care, I'm big on self-care, and always practicing and promoting it to the young people too. Like I have 4 grandchildren, and, they're all doing well. And I'm always, reminding them, take care of yourself. One he's working right now, and he has 5 classes. His weekends are work, and then his gaming in the evenings with his friends, whenever he gets a chance. So I would say you need to self-care, even if you have all that going on, go for walks. So yeah, humor is one of them. Thanks.
Awesome. Gaming, that's big time self-care. John, do you want to add anything or should we move on?
Well, I think the mention of it being a palate cleanser when you're dealing with that very heavy subject, as even outside of Indigenous artists, as artists in general, our job is to make the viewer, the listener, the reader feel something, whether that's anger, hatred, love, pain. We're trying to create a feeling. We're trying to create emotional connection. If you provide just pain after pain after pain without that palate cleanser, you're not so much sharing your pain, you're taking it and passing it on to someone else without self-care, without closing. You're opening that wound, but you're not closing it. And when you listen to our people speak, when you listen to the elders speak, you realize very carefully that they're some of the greatest masters of ceremony. They're some of the greatest orators. Even if when you listen to an elder talk, they'll say something, big, long, pregnant pause. Then they'll say something else, big, long. And how it was taught to me was that elder is thinking about every single word that's about to leave their mouth and how is it going to be effective? Is it going to heal or is it going to hurt? And so that humor is part of that. When those jokes, when they're told, they we talk about dark, morticians have dark humor, or people who deal with stressful situations have dark humor. As Indigenous people, we have that dark humor too. There are things that we laugh about that they're kind of for our own consumption. But if a non-Indigenous person told those jokes, you get the dirty looks. But they're definitely there is a segment of that humor that's for our consumption only. But it's a weird, odd healing. It's almost like contrary medicine. It's almost like a lot of Indigenous groups have the notion of a contrary, and so that's part of that medicine. Is it's a contrariness where you're making light of it. May seem like you're making light of something serious, but it's a way of you're laughing so you're not screaming.
Yeah, I like that. We still have two more questions to get to. Thank you. Those are awesome. Okay, this is from Evan, and I can't see his last name right now. But Evan asked, what made you choose poetry? So let's do poetry, or the genre that you work in, rather than another writing form when talking about issues covered, such as the ones you have all covered. Is there any aspects of your specific genre as a medium that could help fully express the topics you cover? Let's start with poetry, and let's start with John. Lead us away.
I started with poetry as a failed musician. They were lyrics that kind of my musical career went exactly nowhere. So, but for me, I chose poetry because my literary background is spoken word art, performance art. So beat poetry, one poet in front of a microphone in the spotlight. And so poetry allows me the freedom to move across the stage. It allows me to put more emotion into what I'm saying. It allows me to read, put a lot of emotion into a few words. Whereas if I were to try write, I'm recently signed on with Woolsack and Wynne to write my first nonfiction book of essays. And I will admit that it's the most difficult thing I've ever had to write, because I am taking myself out of my comfort zone. Because being as a poet, I'm used to short, get as much information, write it in a way when I'm trying to. So for me, poetry is a way of delivering the message I need to in a short, emotional way, particularly in a society where the attention span is becoming the length of a TikTok video. So that is just trying to take that energy and compress it into something that I can deliver the message I need to deliver in a very short amount of time, while being able to move across the stage with freedom and emotion.
Bevann, any comments
About the poetry?
Well, about the form that you choose. So why choose the written prose or a novel in this case? Because I know it originally started as a memoir, did it not?
Mhm. Yes, I wanted to, like I said, reach a larger audience and for inspiration, healing, and for non-Indigenous to learn about what it was like to be in the school and get that educational piece about the institutions, I should call them. But yeah, and with poetry, like I have these two pieces in the front, and one is called Abstract Me. Um, anyway, it's I think that was my first tryout with poetry. But sometimes I think my stories kind of go in that, like using metaphorically and the way the words flow. So yeah.
Awesome. No, I really like because we have so many different genres here. I'm gonna let Gord answer because he's got a cat on him. I think it's funny. So, Gordon, why long fiction?
Because I suck at everything else. Um,
Oh,
no, I really like the freedom in having 8,700,000 words in which to work. I would argue, although I can't support it with facts at this precise moment, that all Indigenous writing is poetry, whether it's presented as prose or straight up poetry.
I like that. I like that a lot. I like that.
It's not an original thought, but I believe it entirely.
You can coin it, but we'll give it to you at least for the week. Okay, it's on.
Okay, I'll take it.
Stacey, I mean, because I know that you've come to poetry. Now it's a sort of, I think you kind of talked about it a little bit, but
Yeah, while I use poetry on my work, I do, because sometimes I'm given 7 minutes in a short time to talk to people, and I think that the arts are a form that bridges gaps and makes connections on a much deeper level. I think people, you could stand in front of people and quote facts and numbers for hours, and as soon as the test is over, they'd forget. But if you can make that kind of connection on a spiritual or heartfelt level, emotional level, that can last a lifetime. And poetry is a form that can do that, much like music, in a short time frame. But I really got into it. Like I said, I was dealing with a loss in my life, and so I sat down to write about it. And what I ended up doing was writing about that loss in a one-page story of a person's life. So that's from there, it just seemed to be the easiest way for me to do things.
wonderful. We have time for one last quick question, and then we have to wrap things up. This one comes from Camille Amor. Do you face pressure? Hi, Camille. Do you face pressure to temper or soften the authenticity of your writing to make it easier for non-Indigenous people to perceive? Has it become easier for your original works to be published? Kind of two questions there. Answer either one. John?
Yes, absolutely. There is definitely intense pressure. The books that I had published in the past 6 months, for 17 years, they were being sent to various publishers across Canada, and I received rather, coincidentally, 215 rejection letters. I think I'm thinking of applying for a Guinness World Record for rejection letters. And at least they've been published twice, and it was, the works were very, my first book came out in 2004. Was published at Kikotam's Press, The Glass Lodge. It's now out of print. It was a very raw, frank, brutal look at the life I was living as a person, as an urban Indigenous man in an urban setting. And while at that time, it was kind of it was a new concept, apparently, for have the work put forward in poetry. After that, everything, I found myself trying to change how my words were being manipulated in order to get them published. And I actually had with Kikotam, its first, the first time I met with the publisher about it, not Radiant Press, which I'll stick with that. But I drove 3.5 hours to meet a publisher. I sat in a room, the publisher looked at the manuscript, went through it quickly and said, well, there's nothing here I can use. And I stood up and I said, well, that's okay, I don't want to be used, and walked out. And so, you know, you do face a lot of pressure to make your work palatable for non-Indigenous audiences. That being said, we've had such an explosion of Indigenous literature over the past 5 years, and you know, we finally have a voice. We finally have an audience, and it started out kind of as tokenism a little bit. You know, everyone's, you know, you get the few. It had to start somewhere, and it started out as you know, we got our token Indian on our publishing list, and it kicked the doors down. And we, you know, when we've got Indigenous works being developed for the screen, when we've got Indigenous works that are being shortlisted for awards, and one day I hope this book is, you know, we've finally got a voice, and we're not there as a show of tokenism. We are there that we've earned that place as writers, and it took a lot of Indigenous writers and a lot of Indigenous poets to continue banging on those doors until we got heard and saying, no, we're not going to change our words.
Wow. No, thank you. Anushik, those were some definite, that's a powerful way. Yeah, answer the question. I believe we're running out of time here. I don't want to cut off anything that the other writers in this panel would like to share about that. We can say, if you have a quick answer, I'd love to hear it. I'm sure the audience would. Nothing? If we don't have anything, I understand. I mean, John kind of like, he went up there and he definitely Vladimir Guerrero that thing over the Sky Dome fence. So Sky Dome.
Sorry for riding the room. I apologize.
Can I just say one thing about that?
Please, please.
We may change the soften a little. I don't know. I can't tell on my own, maybe, but the fundamental principle of writing is the truth, and if that's difficult, then that's difficult, and it's still worth hearing. You know, I tell people that when I talk about writing from different perspectives, that every story needs to be heard, and if that makes you uncomfortable, it still needs to be heard. So truth is very much a part of writing.
Yes. Thank you. I will let me add one thing. I have not heard more truthful words than those spoken this evening. This has been an absolute gift. I mean, for you to come up and to share, I mean, these aren't works that are easy to write. These aren't words that are easy to share. And I want to thank you, bottom of my heart, for sharing them. These honest stories and emotions, these traumas, these things that we carry with us. I want to thank you. Sure. DJ, I believe you're up. Unmute yourself, DJ.
You know, we could listen to these conversations for a long time, and I think into some respects, you know, we really need to. But with that being said, I just want to say this has been a tremendous evening of sharing, and on behalf of BookFest Windsor, I just want to extend our most sincere gratitude for all of the generous offerings today. The stories, reflections, teachings have provided a wealth of knowledge, and we're truly blessed to be witness to this moment. Daniel, thank you so much for your moderation, for your moderating tonight. It's been a fantastic conversation. The panel is everything that we were hoping that it was, and so much more than that. I'd like to thank everybody who came tonight to bear witness to this. Thank you so much for joining us. There's more to this great weekend. There's sessions to come tomorrow, so be sure to check them out. And also, please check out Biblioasis, the bookstore online, biblioasis.com, to purchase these books that are featured throughout this festival. The link is on the BookFest website. We hope to be together in person next year. Yeah. That's right. Sell that book. You know, so that book, that's why we're here for sharing words, but we're also here to support the authors that have come out. So buy those books, and we truly hope to be together in person next year. But until then, you know, we can connect in a meaningful way, in a good way. So I thank you all very much. I wish everybody a very blessed evening, and good night.